Hey, I'm Jake, and this is the second video that I've done just about 3 months later after my first one. But hey, I'm making progress towards my goal of getting at least 3 videos out before my birthday, which is next Friday. So we're on video 2 of 3, making progress. So today I wanted to focus on a page that I built for Nelson over on the Pixel Geek community. And this, first of all, so Nelson is an awesome dude. We have matching mics because he gave me this one, an extremely generous person. And so I've worked together with Nelson on doing the weekly live stream for the Pixel Geek community. And one of the things that we wanted to do was have a way that people could submit their ideas and have a way to vote, and also have a way to get back to some of the previous streams because there's a lot of good information out there. So it's just one other way for them to get back to that. All that to say, first of all, Nelson just got an awesome promotion at Webflow. And so he's not doing these Saturday live streams anymore, but he will be doing live streams from the Webflow official channel. So make sure that you subscribe over there. Pixel Geek is awesome, so make sure you follow him on Twitter as well. But if you're seeing this, you are probably seeing it because he he might have retweeted it or something. So thanks, Nelson. Anyway, so I tweeted this out back in June, and Matt Evans, gonna give you a little shout out, wanted to see a video. And so the whole way this works is we built a form using a ClickUp form, and of course I if you've seen any of my stuff, I do like ClickUp. It's not perfect, but they are making a significant amount of new features like weekly, and right now they're preparing for a couple of big features coming out. So keep an eye out for that. I don't know which ones they are, but I do have some ideas based on some of the stuff that I've seen on the user testing. All that to say, I'm going to show you how I put this together in the Webflow side of things, hence the Webflow hat today. And then I'm going to show how I connected this from ClickUp using Integromat, and we're just going to go through it and see how it goes. Nelson is big on just clicking record and going for it. And so that is what I'm doing, because this is now take 5 just to do the stupid intro. So I'm just going to let it run. And I am conscious of how many times I say So I'm going to be making a conscious effort to not be saying that. So if you have any long, awkward pauses, it's because I'm suddenly thinking about how many times I just said One thing that I wanted to say before I go any further, on the description of this video and my previous video, there it is again. I just can't even, that's my go-to thing. So sorry about all the uhs. So if you have a question, I'm crying. We're going to pause. All right, we're going to try this again. So if you have a question or idea that you'd like to submit, it is provided here in this description, and you can just click that link. You know, out of these 2 videos that I've done, or that I'm currently doing, both of them have been on Twitter, so feel free to submit it on Twitter as well. But that said, I do have a ClickUp list that goes into. So I'm trying to kind of figure out which ones I want to do next. Really, I should probably be setting up my own voting page at some point. But anyway, So all that said, let's hop in. So the very first thing that I think we should do is just take a look at it from the Webflow side of things, just so you can kind of see how this is set up. I'm not going to rebuild it, just because that takes a little bit of time. So while I'm pointing out I'll try to point out little things that I do along the way, just because I think it can be helpful for anybody who is using these tools. And sometimes you just don't realize that there's quick ways to do certain things that you do all the time. So one of the things is if you hit Command K or Command E when you're in Webflow, you can get this little find anything view. And I've done this to add like a div or anything like that. That's probably what a lot of people use it for. But if you didn't know, you can also just type in a page name and then hit enter, and it'll take you right to that page instead of navigating to it from the pages area. So maybe that just taught somebody something. If not, oh well. So what I've got here is some collection lists. And so for this, I will just kind of plug this here. So we've got the main ideas grid, and this is coming from all of this is coming from one collection. And the way this is set up is as you would probably expect. You got like the idea title, description, and then the one thing that's a little bit different with this one is we're capturing votes from the member community, which I'll also do a little plug. Just because Nelson is moving up into a different position and isn't doing the live streams, he is still part of the Pixel Geek community, which you can join over here. So become a member there. Anyway, so we were tracking both member votes and public votes. So for this demo, I'm just going to focus on the public votes just to keep things a little bit more streamlined. And yeah, so just checking a few different things. The one thing right here is whether or not it's been kind of promoted to a live stream. And so that is kind of what decides whether or not it shows up over on this side. And so basically I've got a collection list right here. There's no upcoming streams tier, but we do have the recent streams here. And so this is showing stuff. And all it's doing is looking to see if that checkbox is checked. And then it's looking to see if, so when we had upcoming streams, it was looking to see if it was before the date or not. And so if it was coming up, it would show up in this one. And if it was past, it would show up in this one based on that date. So how do we make these votes work? This is where all the fun comes. And so I think what I should probably do is, I haven't shown you anything on the ClickUp side. And so this is part of me just hitting record. So what we need to see is how the Jetboost side of things works. We're going to need to see how it's set up in ClickUp, and then how I've tied all that together. So bear with me. All right, here we go. What we can see here is the ideas that were coming in from this form. And so over here on the website, you got this form, and this is just a ClickUp form. And so if I come over here, so in ClickUp, you can click New View and choose a form, and you'll get something like this. And all you have to do, so I'm in editing now, is you pull over any of the forms, or any of the fields rather, that you are trying to collect, and then you can give it your own custom names for each of those things. So up here, you have what the custom field is called, and then this is what actually shows on the form. And so if you need any new custom forms, you can just, or custom fields, I keep mixing these words, you just click that and you can create a new one. And it's based on the custom fields that are in this list. So you can also come over here and you can edit the custom fields for that list. So what I've got here is who submitted it and how many votes, etc. All right, so I'm going to try to show you the overall flow of how the ideas come in and what happens with each one of these. So if I come in here and I submit something, so I'll just say, what's my idea? Do a cool video. So let's just grab Pixel Geek. And I don't need to submit that. So if I submit this, this will come over here into our ideas section. And I might need to refresh. All right, so I've got do a cool video. So if I come in here, I can see the information. I've got it in my custom fields here. What I'm gonna do is, so here is, don't get overwhelmed. The reason I have all these different scenarios here is basically, I could have done these as separate Integromat scenarios, but I chose to do it in one just to kind of keep it all in one place. And what I've done is used a router to see what's happening. So I'll see if I can do a simplified version of this for this stream, for this video, but this is how this one was set up. So what we'll do is we'll hit run. And just to give an overview of what's happening is when I submit over here on this form, I have these automations tied to different statuses. So in ClickUp, you can set custom statuses for any of your tasks. And then you can set automations right from within ClickUp. So if I come over here to this little automate tab and then hit active automations. So what I can see here are these different ones that I've set up that call a Webflow, that call a webhook. So let's see here. All right, so in this one, we have when the status changes, call a webhook. So if I show you this, so the status, I've set this for a status change, but these are all your different options. And then I can set it to the status that I want. And then I have all these different actions that I can do. And so I've got this calling a webhook. And so that's how that is called there. And so over on the Integromat scenario, our first step is a webhook. And so I've got this running so that we can just see how this flows. So I'm going to head back over here into ClickUp and do my cool video. And so I can either click the next status, which is voting, or I can click it from here. This is just kind of nice if you are following a very organized set of steps. It's just a quick way to get to the next step. So basically what's happening here is I can say, the reason I wanted it to come into ClickUp first rather than going straight to Webflow is that maybe I wanted to update the title. Whatever. So I can update that first and make sure that everything else looks good. And then I can click next and go to voting. So I'm going to head over here and we can watch this happen. And oops, I need to, this is good, failing in public. it's been a while since I've run this. So it looks like I need to reauthorize my setup here. So I can come over to the Connections tab here, and I need to reauthorize my Pixel Geek ClickUp. So if I come over here, I just need to add Pixel Geek to my workspaces. All right. So now if I come back to my scenarios and there's that one. All right. So if I click into it, so I got an error. Now let's just see if I can actually pull this back. So in some cases, you can actually rerun it. And it looks like in this case, I wasn't able to. Yeah. So let's just check something. Okay. Well, we will just try this again. So I'm going to hit run. And like I said, it's been a while since I've done these. So I'm going to come in here, change that back to new, and I'm going to delete my test. And actually in Webflow, you also need to refresh. Oh, actually, it didn't go through, so I'm smart. Okay, so we will hit voting. Try this again. There we go. All right. That's the way it's supposed to work. So what's happening here is it comes in, it gives us information about the task. And what I'm mostly concerned about is the ID that comes through the payload. And you can get some of this stuff right from what comes through the webhook. But what I like to do is add this get a task step because it actually formats things a lot better, especially in regard to custom fields. So it just makes them a lot cleaner to deal with, as opposed to in here, the way the custom fields come in is it's pulling in all of the ones that are available for that list, and you just have a lot more work. So I just like to pull it straight from here. So what I do is I look at the payload right there. There we go. And then I just click on ID and it shows up there. So once we get that, then what's happening here is we go, when the status is set to a specific status ID. And what I did here was I literally just looked and waited. Like I did some tests and I found the ID that worked best for that. You could set it based on the text of the voting or of the status, but if you change the text, just know that that'll break it. So that's why I used the ID here. So basically what we're looking for is the status ID is equal to this. And so one of the fields that is in here is the stream link. And so as long as this is blank, it hasn't been, oh yeah. So if this is empty, then it's not something that's already been set up for a live stream. And so it's just sending it to the voting. So again, you could set this all up as separate scenarios so that things are a little bit maybe less daunting if this like overwhelms you. So the next thing is just to check whether or not it's been sent to Webflow yet, because there might be a situation where, so I built this in a way that I could just not have to go into Webflow at all. So like if I needed to make a change to it, I could send it to this status again. And if the ID already exists, so the Webflow ID, if it already exists, then it's already been published. And so if it's already been published, then we'll do an update based on that item ID. And then I've just got a step in here to post a comment that says that it's been done. And so you can see that right here. And it's doing it as me just because I'm the one that has authorized my account. So at 8020, we have a ClickUp account called Wally, and he is our little robot that does all the notifications and stuff. So let's see here. So in this step, I'm creating the item. And this is the part that takes the longest, is just waiting for these things to load each time. So I set the Webflow site, which collection we're dealing with. In this case, we only have one. And then I can set all of the different fields right here. And so if you're not familiar with Integromat, you can see all of your different steps here. So the information I'm trying to get is from this get a task. And so I can just click on any of these, and some of these are an array. And so what I can do in that situation is basically just click on the little arrow, and you can see some of the items in there. One little thing specifically with this, let's see if I can find an example. Well, if I did something like this, one thing I didn't know previously is you could actually, let me just see if I can do this. If you have an array, you can actually click on this and then change which array item you want. So sometimes there's just, like when I split a name into first and last, I'll use a split in here and it creates an array. And then I can just say, if I want the last name, I want number 2 of the array. And arrays in Integromat actually start at 1 instead of 0. So that is good to know. All right. So this is how the item gets created. We post a comment over to ClickUp. And then in this step, we're editing that task to add information about the Webflow item ID. So when this loads, so we're mapping this to the previous task ID, and this ID came from the get a task. I could have also used the payload ID right here, but it doesn't matter. And then right down here, we're going to use the item ID of the created Webflow item. And this is just a way that we can reference back when we're checking to see if it's already been published. And if it's already been published, then we already know which one to update. So that is really everything to just get it sent over into Webflow. And so that's kind of the main part of what you would probably be trying to do if you're trying to do something like this. And then the next thing that I would need to show you is, let's see here. So this one, again, had it got deactivated when I changed my ClickUp. So what this does is every night, we could set this to more often if we wanted to. You can do that down here at the schedule setting. So what this does is it just checks the live streams collection, pulls a list, and then it actually updates the ClickUp task. So as it runs, let me just see if I can just run it right now. So what it'll do is it's going to cycle through each of the items that exists in this Webflow collection. So it's pulling all these, and in Webflow, we have how many votes there are. So it's pulling all of the votes from here. These are the ones that have votes because these have already been published. I'll show you the live stream switch. So if it's yes, then it's already a current live stream. And these are the ones that are up for voting. So what this sync is doing is it's pulling those down and it's grabbing the information about each one of these. And then the main thing that we're concerned about in this scenario is, once this loads, we want to get how many votes there are. So we're grabbing, in this case, we were doing the member votes and the public votes, and we were giving, we were weighting it so that the member votes got a little bit more weight than the public votes. And so that's how we were doing that. And then this would pull in to here. So the weighted votes are how we were counting in here. We were sorting it by the weighted votes. And then that just helped us decide, okay, as long as we're sure we can do this, let's go ahead and promote this to a live stream. And so in that situation, we could move to the next step, which it was when I would put together the stuff that we needed for the YouTube stream. But anyway, this is how all of this information was getting pulled. And that way we didn't have to keep going back and forth to Webflow. We just wanted it all in the place that we were using to manage our calendar and plan the live streams. So this is a very roundabout way. Hopefully this is still exciting and useful. I don't know if it's exciting. At the very least, you can play this in the background when you're trying to fall asleep, and I can serenade you and lull you into a sleep. So, all right. So now you have an understanding of how I get these from ClickUp into Webflow, and then how I pull it down into ClickUp so that we can see how many votes have been done for each one. And this is where we can schedule this for however often we want that to happen. And you do have, for the paid Integromat plans, you have more options for how often you run this. So if you do it at regular intervals, you could do it, every 5 minutes. I'm not sure what the limit is for the unpaid plans. So just know that that's one of those limitations. So I know I'm kind of jumping around, but that's one of the things where it's like, I just want to get this out. And if it's not perfect, it's not perfect. Hopefully one of these days I'll get better at this, but at least you have something to look at if you are trying to accomplish something like this. And I will try to put in some chapters so you can jump around. Okay, so what we need to do is I need to show you how to get the votes to work. So on this side, we've got a vote button. And let's see if I can make this a little bit bigger. So the way that Jetboost helps us out with this is, I'm going to hop over to Jetboost. So Jetboost is awesome. I love it. And it makes it super easy to create different types of little customizations. You could do dynamic list filters is how I first started using Jetboost. So the cool thing with this is that it's real time. And so you can set multiple filters on a large list and have it filter down in real time. And then there's also the real-time list search, which is really cool. And the cool thing is that you can basically use multiple of these boosters on the same thing. So in this situation, we are using the favorite CMS items booster. And so these do cost money, but it's worth it. And the cool thing is if you're building a lot of websites, you could have them all in the same account and you just keep adding new sites. So hopefully this all makes sense so far. So we're just going to focus on the public ideas voting. So if I edit this, the first thing you're going to do is choose which collection you're going to use for this. And then in this case, we had two different number fields in Webflow that we could use. And so in this situation, I was using both of them, but obviously with different settings. So if I come over here, I'm just going to show you what this looks like. So when you add a field, you have all these choices and you can choose number. And so that's what we're using for the public votes here. So if I hop over here, if you add it and then you republish your site, keep in mind, anytime you make any changes on your Webflow side, you're going to need to republish it. So I would need to save it, save the collection, and then republish. And then you could resync it right here. The cool thing is, and this is what we were doing for the membership side, is you can tie it to one of these membership platforms. So if I go back, I can go to member idea voting. And in this situation, I'm using the MemberStack platform here. And this actually is a better way to do it if you have the option, because it keeps people from potentially trying to work the system by doing it in separate browsers or whatever. But for this situation, we didn't care that much. But we did want to give the member votes a little bit extra weight. And so we did capture both of these separately. So I will hop back over into the previous one. I don't know if I can do it right from here. Oh, here we go. Public ideas. Cool. So we're not using a membership platform. And then I just hop over here and I can copy this Jetboost script. And this will actually go into the custom code section in your site settings. And it takes me right there. So that's cool. So I can just copy that in right there. And so once I have that, I can do a test. And again, you need to always publish like it shows. But once you test, it sees if you did it right, and then you can move on. So at this point, you choose whether or not you want it to be for a list item or a template page. So a template page would be like if you're doing a blog and you are trying to do it on the blog post page. So in this case, I don't have a detail page, even though anytime you have a collection, if you can see down here, I see this live streams template. This is the kind of page that is talking about. But in our case, we are just doing it for a list. So we're going to do it for a collection list item. And then what I'll do is copy this. And if I come in here, so the first thing it wants you to do is at the collection list level, you'll create a class and just paste that in there. And so to demonstrate that, I can just come in here and choose that again. One little quick thing, if you do Command Enter, I'm on a Mac obviously, but it's probably Control Enter on a PC. And then you can just paste in that name. In this case, rather than creating a new class, I'll just choose this existing one. But that is a quick way to get to your selector up here. And then the collection item embed. So this, you just copy it. And I've got too many tabs open as usual. And then you're going to just create a new HTML embed. So if I do Command K, and I've already added this obviously, but I'm just going to do it again. So just do embed, hit enter, and then paste. And then I would save and close, and it would go in there. So I'm just going to remove that extra one. So this is how Jetboost knows which item to filter, or in our case, which item is going to be favorited. And then we need a div for the favorite button. So inside of our idea, we have our little vote area, and then we've got our vote button. What you don't see is there's actually 3 divs for this. And so if I look in here, I've got a container. I wish my screen would show this. There we go. So I have a container for all 3 of these buttons, and I'll actually come in here and display these for now. So the way this works is you want a div that contains all of these, and then you're just going to paste in that style name right there. So I can copy that and just come over here and paste it. And then you need 3 divs inside of that for each of your buttons. So I've got these buttons here, and you're just going to use these exact names that show up down here. And so you can just grab this text and copy that for each one. And it just explains exactly how you're going to do this. There's a saving state, and this one's optional, but I do think it's helpful because there is a little bit of a pause. So item is not a favorite, which is just the standard vote. And then item is favorite means that it's already been voted on. And then we got our saving button. And you can get creative and do like little animations and things like that for there. Just do like a spinning GIF or something like that. And then you will just set these to default to display none. So when it first loads, none of those show. And then Jetboost will take care of showing it or not at the proper time. And then the other thing that we want to do is we want this to increment. So if you're doing just a standard favorite, you don't need this step, but it is pretty darn cool if you ask me. So before I go any further, you can do a test. You would just put in the page that you're on, and it'll give you a little, I'm probably on the wrong link. Yep, that works. Get a cool little animation. If nothing else, it makes you feel good. So what I want to do is display a user's total favorites and update item favorite count in real time. So I think I did both of these. But yeah, so you want it to show the total number of that. So what you need to do is you want to tie it to that item in your CMS. So in our case, it was the member votes. So public votes, sorry, member votes is on the other page. Public votes right here. This one has the total favorites class name right here. So I would just copy that, add that there. And then, let's see here. So what it does is it loads the initial value, and then it will populate it, it'll increment it by 1 once it actually gets voted on. So I think that is about it for that. I think the display users favorites, this one is just a simpler version of this one. So this one does kind of both of those things. So now we've got that, and then this is almost the same thing, but we just simplified it and took out the voting buttons. And I think all this is doing is just, I've got a link that ties to that live stream link. So yeah, I think that kind of covers the Webflow side of things. So now we get to figure out the Integromat side. And so I wanted to just, I think in some of the comments, people are hoping that I'll just kind of show step by step how to build one of these. So I think I've covered the overall flow. So feel free to stop watching at this point. But if you would like to see me continue and build out each step, I can do that. So I am going to pause All right. So if you're still sticking around, the first thing I'll do is I'm going to create a new scenario. So I'll hop over here. I'm just going to keep this tab open so you can keep referring back to it. So I'm just going to make a new folder. Call this demo. All right, so here you go from the beginning. I'll show you how to do this. So I like to give it a descriptive name. If you don't, it will actually take whichever modules you've added and it'll add that to the title. So at least you can somewhat find it. So let's just do demo, send item from ClickUp. All right. So the first thing you do is choose your modules. And one cool thing you can do as well, and I'll do this to save time, but normally you would just choose like which ones you want to use. So I want to use a webhook, so I'll click that. So another thing you can do is if you have another scenario where you just want to pull in those same modules, I can just do a shift select here. So I'm holding down shift and then just do Command C and then Command V. When I'll get all these guys in here, I'll actually be able to choose these. Well, I should. Let me save. If I save and then refresh, all these modules will be down here. So it's a little bit of a cheat code. Also, I like to start these by just either cloning an existing one. So if I come here, I can clone it. That way, at least I have all the modules. And then even if I'm deleting them for the other steps, I can just quickly delete like that. I'm just going to keep that webhook here. So I should be able to, oh, maybe not. Usually I thought I was able to delete those, but we will go completely from scratch. So we want a webhook and we want it to be custom webhook. And then anytime you add a new module like this for the first time and for each individual webhook, you will actually create a new connection. So 1 second for water. I hope you guys can't hear each time I swallow. I'm very self-conscious about that now. So I try to give the webhook a somewhat usable name here. So it's kind of like what the action is being done that would send this. So in this case it would be send ClickUp idea to Webflow, something like that. All right, so I've got my webhook. I will copy this to the clipboard. And what I'll do is, here we go. Nope. We'll do it in here. And so this is where we would come in. I'm going to do add an automation, and we'll do it on a status change for voting when it gets set to voting. And in this case, I'm also going to add another, I'm going to do it if there's a tag, and I'll call it test. And this will just keep it from interfering with the other one. Okay, so I did that really fast, sorry. So you just scroll down here, webhook, or just start typing. And then you go paste that webhook. One thing that's actually kind of cool if you're using different types of webhooks is you can actually add query parameters here. So I could do like task equals. So like if all you wanted to do was just pull in the ID like that, I'm going to leave it like this just for this demonstration. So I'll hit create, and then I'll come down here and add my little description, because as you can see, when when you get a bunch, it can be hard to tell which one does what. I do hope that they fix this to make it a little bit easier to tell things apart. would be awesome if you could rearrange these, but whatever. So yeah, so Jake's demo. And what I'm realizing is that I should just, since we're not using this anyway right now, I'm just going to do send to voting on Webflow. I'm just going to turn that one off for now. All right. So, cool. And one thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to show you how you can use Postman to help us with this initial testing, so you don't have to keep triggering it from ClickUp. So we're just going to use this as our test item, and we'll add that test tag. You don't have to add that. I was just using that as a way to show you that you can add multiple criteria. I do think that's specifically for the paid plans in ClickUp. So what you can do is just, because yeah, certain levels, I think in the ClickUp plans have certain amounts of automation things you can do. So in those cases, if you're on a lower tier, ClickUp's not that expensive, even if you're on the highest one. So yeah, if you find yourself using the automations a lot, I recommend using the business one, which is like, I don't know, $10 a month. Okay, so I'm gonna do Jake, and I don't think I need anything else here. So what we'll do is add our demo right here. Hit OK. I'm going to delete this. All right. So the very first thing you want to do when you run this is just get the initial payload so that you have stuff to work with. So what I'll do here is hit this for voting, and then I should get my first little webhook update. Hopefully. So I'm just going to double check my settings. Come down here, Jake's demo. All right, so when the status changes to voting, blah, 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 call my webhook. All right, I'm just going to try it again. 9QR. Yeah, same one. So I'll just hit it run again. And where's my test? All right, so I tried setting that again, and now we've got the response. So this is where I'm going to show you how we can use Postman. So Postman, and you can use the web version. I like to use the download version, and yeah, it's free. If you really use it a lot and you want to use it with other people, that's kind of when you would want to start paying for it. But you can sync it with your Gmail or anything like that. So yeah, just download the app is what I like to do. And so if I hop over here, I'm just going to create a new collection. And this is just, a storage place for all your different requests. And so I'm going to add a request here, and this will be for my add from ClickUp to Webflow. So the reason I'm doing this step, and you don't have to do this at all, I'm doing this because I don't want to have to keep going into ClickUp when I'm testing this. I don't have to keep resubmitting this item, but you can totally do that. So if Postman is just like scaring you, there's no reason to make life harder. But I do want to show this for some of the more advanced users that this is possible. So if I come over here and I copy this address to the clipboard, This is really helpful if you have a very specific session, like a specific scenario that you're trying to recreate. And each time you run it in Integromat, it's not like Zapier where you have that same data to just keep running through it. So this is helpful to recreate some of those situations. So what I want to do is I've already grabbed my webhook address. And now that I've run it for the first time, if you come up here, so you click the little navigate or the little, what is this called? Magnifying glass. And then we want to download the output bundles. So I can just come over here and then just Command A, Command C. And what I'll do is for the post body here is we're going to do raw and JSON. And I'll just paste this in here. Now I don't need all of this information for this query. So all I really want is payload and ID. And the reason I'm doing this is because this is what's going to get sent over into this webhook. And right here, just so you know, this is that query parameter that I added back over here in ClickUp. So you can add some of that stuff right in the URL if you want. Otherwise, the rest of it comes through as the payload, and then you have access to all of those items. So if all you wanted was to just use that one ID, that's one way to do it as well. So in my test, I could also do this. I could do task equals, and then my task ID, which is right here. So I could do that and actually bypass this whole, the body here, and just do it from here. So I'll do it both ways just so you can see. And just to clean things up a little bit, first of all, if you tried running it like this has it in an array, like in the square brackets. We don't need that, so I'm just gonna get rid of that. If you do Command B, it will clean up your JSON. And then it also helps you see when you've got an error. And I'm just gonna come down here and clear this stuff out. And I need my closing curly brace. All right, so don't let that freak you out, but basically we just have a little bit of JSON here, and it's got a payload with an ID inside of this little collection. So if I save that, and then I'm gonna come back to here, and I'm gonna run this. So I hop back here, and I just hit send. Boom. So now we can see task, task, and then the payload. All I wanted was this. So the cool thing is that I can use either one of these and be good to go. All right, that was a really long way to get things going, but I do think this will be a little bit faster for us to go forward. So the next thing we want is, if I'm looking at ClickUp, I've got a lot of different options here. And if I don't see the option that I want, the cool thing is that I can also do an API call. And so I think I already know my next video is to show you how you can tie tasks together using this API call, because ClickUp does have relationships, and although you can't set them in one of these modules, you can do it with an API call, and it is super helpful. So I'm going to do get, and we'll do get a task. So I can just add this here. And one thing that I sometimes do on my webhooks is I'll just say, does the thing exist that I'm looking for? Because I feel like sometimes these webhooks get called more often than you might think. So in this case, I'm looking for the payload ID is equal to ID. I could use this task down here, but I'm actually going to remove that just because we don't need it for this. So I'm just checking to make sure that exists. Otherwise, don't continue. And then we want to use the ID that came in. And so we're mapping it. And this is how Integromat talks about these kind of things. So I hit OK. All right. So if I run that, we'll just get our initial information. And this is going to make it easier to do the next step. So now we've got the information about the task. And let's just take a look back here. So in my scenario, I used a router so that I could have different filters to choose different scenarios. And I'm kind of interchanging scenario. This is what Integromat calls a scenario, but I'm also, I'll call these different branches of this scenario. So we'll just start off with the most basic. Okay, so rather than adding all these routers, let's just add the next step, which would be to create the item. Actually, we'll do a branch. We'll do a single branch to do the whether or not it was already published. So what we'll do is we'll add a router from the tools area. And then what you can do is you can just click it and it'll pop up a couple options here. So our next one is going to be Webflow. And if you don't have that one as a choice yet, you just go to add and just start typing Webflow. Again, as you get more advanced and there's certain things that you're trying to do that aren't available in these existing modules, you can do an API call. And if you saw my first video, I showed a little bit about why I think this is so cool, is because you don't have to go through all the steps of doing an API call, like authentication. Like this takes care of that. So you authenticate once right through the interface and it makes it super easy. So what we'll do is we want to create an item. And we'll choose the collection ID of live streams, which is the only one we're dealing with. All right. So when we first create these, the main thing we're going to do is give it a title, and we'll use the task name for the title. And then if there's anything in here that we want to include, we can. I had made this field just so that it was easy to get back to it. So we can just grab the ClickUp ID. Let's see, who's it submitted by? So we come down here to our custom fields. You can also, if you say type name or submitted, it'll filter this out. And we can do that. All right. And if we had a description, we could do that as well, but I'm not going to do that for now, just to keep it simple. All right. Now, if we don't add filters on these paths, basically it's going to run both of them. So we want to say not created yet. And so actually, since we don't have the Webflow ID custom field yet, we're not going to be able to create this condition unless you want to try something cool. So if I select one of the custom fields that came through, so in this case, we only have one to choose from. And just for context, let me just show you what I'm talking about. So we have a field for Webflow ID. This is what we're looking for. So one little trick, if you copy one of these that came through, and actually you don't even have to do that, but this is a good starting place. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to hop over into like a text editor and then paste it. And you can see it's just double curly braces, the number of the step in your scenario. And then this is the item. They have kind of custom IDs for these. If you hover over it, you can see raw and then custom fields. That is what we're using here. So number dot raw dot, and then when you have names that have spaces in them, you need these ticks. And these are not the little apostrophe. They're the one that's to the left of the one, at least on US keyboards. So I can just get rid of this part, and we're just going to call this Webflow ID because this is what it is called over here. So I can actually just select all, copy, and then hop back over here. I'm going to get rid of that and then just paste it. Now you can see it's outlined like this because it didn't come through. So, but we want to say this Webflow ID does not exist yet. There's other ways you could do this, but this is the way that I'm doing it. So Webflow item not created yet. And so then I could come down here and I can say already exists or something better. And so you could say this and then exists. Okay. So all that to say, you don't have to do that little trick that I did. What you could do is you could run this again, have it create the item, or you could actually just, sorry, you don't even have to do that. You could just populate this with like 1, 2, 3, run it again, and then this would come through. So it doesn't send the custom fields unless there's data in it. And so if you just put in some dummy data, then that can help you set up your little flow here. I'm going to take this out because that won't help us right now. Okay. So I'm going to, let's try running this. Oops. Yeah, we should be good. I'm going to hit this again. Again, you could do this right from ClickUp to trigger it again, but this is a little easier. Okay. So I've got this created over on the Webflow side. And again, I need to refresh. It'd be nice if if at some point you don't have to refresh, but so I come in here, I've got my test item. Now, one thing that I didn't check is this is good if you're not like you don't want to commit to having it go live right away. But the fact that I'm checking it in ClickUp first before I send it over, that's kind of enough for me to feel good about publishing it. So what I need to do over here is I need to set this to live. So when I do that, and by the way, slug right here is going to be created based on this task name. But if you wanted to do a custom one, you could do that. Just keep in mind that you do have to follow the rules. So unless you're trying to do something fancy, I would just leave this alone. So you can do that. And then, so next time we do this, it will actually publish it for me. But this is actually good that I didn't because we don't really need this on the live site. So, and in that case, I'm probably going to just take this off. All right. So if you don't define it, it will just default to staging it for publish. And I think by choosing no, I might have just told it to do it as a draft. So we'll find out. Okay, so if it already exists, and this is speaking of the Webflow ID, well, actually, so we did this step, but we need to add another step. And this is going to be to edit with custom fields. So edit a task with custom fields. And so we'll do Pixel Geek. We'll choose live streams. And it's the ideas. Okay, so you don't want to choose one of these. You want to map, and we're going to map it to the existing task, which in this case is number 7. And you can rename these. I would recommend that as you get larger scenarios. Let me just, before I do this, we want to scroll down here to Webflow ID, and we'll use the item ID. So the item ID is how we'll do updates. So we're sending that back to ClickUp. And if you wanted to, you could add a comment. So I'll just start typing comment, and then you could do post a task comment. And that's how you could just do like a little notification for whoever's using this that, hey, this went live. So now I'm going to add this as an update item. And then we'll choose live streams. All right. So here we don't want to use this. We want to map it again. And this one will be the Webflow ID, which we don't have right here. But if I go back to my text editor, I can just grab that again. So this is actually a quick way that you can reuse things like this without having to resubmit and get that new, get that data. So then I can add a description or whatever. I'm probably only going to, in this case, I would probably only be changing like the title. So I'll just pull that task name again as the title. And we can make that live. Okay. So, all right. I'm going to run this. And we're going to try the update item. But before I do that, I want to grab this item ID. And I'm going to pre-populate that down here. So this will just mean we're good to test this. So test updated. So we're going to update this. And if I change this to the voting status, I should get this same situation. Again, I could run this through Postman. Okay. Oh. So because I chose live, it can't apply to something that's already been published. So we'll just say no. Or that hasn't been published. So because this one was set to staged for publish, yeah. Keep in mind also, if you were to add a new field in here, in the meantime, you do need to republish your site or else that will not work. So let's try running it again. Now, this is actually where Postman is helpful. I don't have to change my status back and forth. I can just resend the same test. Okay, so now we got the updated item. It sent through the new title, and you do need to refresh. There it is. So that's how you do that. And then, yeah, so I think that pretty much covers the basics of creating one of these scenarios. Obviously, I'm not going to walk you through all of these steps. This path here was if I had a status that was like, maybe I posted it, made it live, and we changed our minds. I have a status that I could set to nope, and it would take it down. So that is what that is for. So it edits the task and archives it. And if the Webflow ID exists, which it should at that point, it's going to update that item and it will archive that item and make that live to the site so that if you don't choose that, then you're going to have to go back to Webflow and republish, which defeats the purpose of having these automations. So I think that's about it. Yep. And then the only other thing is if you wanted to set up the sync that happens, I'm not going to rebuild this, but all it is using a different Webflow module. So when you look in Webflow, you can do list items. It's going to pull all those items from that specific collection. So we do that. Live streams, you can set however many you want to pull. And then this little guy is just making sure that there's a ClickUp ID and that it's not a live stream. The main reason there being we need the ClickUp ID to write back that information with the votes. So we want to make sure that exists. Otherwise, it's a waste of pulling that information. And we also want to make sure that it's not a live stream because, again, there's no reason to count the votes for those. So all we're going to do now is then, if it makes it through that filter, we'll just edit that task once it comes through. So that's actually why I had added that ClickUp ID field on the Webflow side. So we map this to the ClickUp ID. So I'm seeing all of my fields here that I had created, and I see my member votes and public votes. And so those are coming down here for these custom fields. So member votes, public votes, and then our weighted votes, I'm doing a little bit of math. So I will show you this actually. This is helpful. So whenever you're doing functions here, you can use some of these functions here. You can use some of the math operators. I think if I just do a regular plus, nope. So you would just choose one of these, and that's how you can do math inside of there. Another thing that's helpful is if you want to do something like this where it checks to see if it's empty. So if it's empty, and then you put in the field that you're looking for. So let's just say submitted by name. And then you could populate it if it's empty. And so that's kind of cool. Another thing that's useful is empty string. So sometimes you want to just send a blank field. But like in programming, you would just use like double quotes or null. This is the closest thing to that. So it's just a special character like this, or a special space character, things like that, that can be helpful. So there you have it. This is very long, but I hope you made it through if that was something that you wanted to see. And again, if you have any other ideas, submit them. The link is in the description, and yeah, we'll see you on the next video.